Hi, it's Becky. Welcome. Here's the deal. A few months ago, I stumbled upon the best fantasy world you've never heard of. Yes, Trails is a video game series and it is anime, and those aren't categories I usually interact with, and it is also niche in both of those genres. But Trails so appeals to the fantasy reader and writer and me, so maybe it will for you too. Also, I created 3 of these video games. I really wish that it were more accessible to outsiders to the JRPG genre, which is Japanese role-playing games, and also the video game medium, so I am therefore going to introduce you to Trails in this video, and then on this channel we'll be playing through the first one, concentrating on the narrative in the world. I'm not saying that Trails is perfect, or even inoffensive, or even that I don't treat the third arc as camp, because I do. And yet, and here's where I get into my writing bullshit and tell you why I love it, they took an excellent premise in the correct genre and medium and simply put their whole pussy into it. As writers do, I've been thinking long and hard about where the particular appeal lies for me, who hasn't watched much anime or played many JRPGs, but also RPGs. Anyways, the key is, Trails games are really weird for their genre. They're kind of just delivery vehicles for the story world. They have some of the highest word counts of any video game scripts, so you're doing a lot of reading, with also the stuff you'd usually expect being mostly optional, like the fighting monsters, reading books, doing side quests, buying stuff. You can get through the game pretty much just by clicking through the dialogue and running to the right places and beating the handful of story battles that you can make very easy for yourself. The other key is, these games are made by a small studio which can't compete with big studio graphics by its admission, so they decided to try to rival them by writing this huge, ambitious story to be released over games and years. Okay, first, the world. The series takes place on the fictional continent of Zemuria, which was once home to the ancient Zemurian civilization. Then, 1,200 years ago, the civilization mysteriously collapsed, plunging humanity into the Dark Ages, during which time modern countries formed. Then, 50 years ago, one plucky scientist, C. Epstein, rediscovered the key behind ancient Zemurians' lost technology based on refining a special ore called septium into orbal circuitry, is what it's called. Science has evolved rapidly since then, going from medieval tech to computing in a matter of decades. Wait, computing? You mean like a fantasy power that stands in for computing, like telepathy or something, right? No, I goddamn don't. I mean that the Epstein Foundation is laying cables and building servers so that people can have international multiplayer Tetris tournaments. It is deranged in the best way. And I didn't even mention any of the mech robots or the fact that Heelys are canon. Problem is that social change doesn't nearly keep pace with technological change. The history major in me wants to jump out, but suffice to say, if it gets easier for people to communicate and move around and also have any leisure time, some of them are going to question how feudal systems really serve them. We start in a game world with a variety of governments whose structures do actually impact main events, and which are far too new to be necessarily stable. Since tech is so accelerated, that means weapons of war have too. Countries in this world try harder to avoid it than in other fantasy worlds because the carnage will inherently be so much greater. Therefore, conflict has to take place in more covert arenas. There's royal intrigue, private and public intelligence agencies, but most of all, there is a growing international consciousness and many non-state actors. Here is a brief list of the heaviest hitters, and that's just the ones that aren't spoilers. Wow, Becky, you say, that's a lot to take in. Good news! Trails in the Sky, the first game, eases you into the chaos. It is a story of 2 childhood friends who go looking for their missing father and stumble upon a conspiracy that leads them to the main plot. I thought it was very slow the first time, but oh my god, it is so wholesome and lovely, and also this is my 3rd playthrough, so obviously I got over myself. This Let's Play is basically what I wish I had, which is a friend to hype me through the longish parts, and also kind of tell me about JRPGs without sacrificing the story. It's a really weird balance to strike when it's like half a book and half a video game. Again, the format is very strange, even for like the genre that it's in. Anyways, at the beginning of the game, Joshua and Estelle sign on to this thing called the Bracer Guild, which is one of the main international organizations that I listed. After a war between Erebonia and Liberl, here they are on the map, the guild formed to protect civilian lives and thriving because it turns out countries do not always or even often care about their own or other civilians. So basically, you spend a lot of the game doing small tasks that start to weave together after a couple of chapters. I think the whole thing will be like 20 episodes of 23 minutes. These are long games, but I think that the just detail that you get from doing small quests for people and also just sort of the micro level interactions really make it. There are 4 arcs so far with different protagonists, 11 mainline games that are direct sequels, taking place over just 6 years. The game's plots are genre typical, but the series complicates them by setting many games in a short period. letting protagonists and playable characters from each of the 4 arcs re-encounter each other as friends and endings, and offering different perspectives on the same events. There is an overarching trajectory and a planned ending, but I can't tell you the overarching trajectory. Now, I'm not that big a Marvel kid, but IGN compared these games to like a JRPG MCU. And then the overarching quest, sort of like the Infinity Stones. Honestly, I only saw the first Avengers. Please don't hold me to that. Anyways, the games are subdivided into arcs, which each focus on different protagonists from different countries. Every game gives you multiple party members to control, and these characters tend to come back again and again in subsequent games. The intertextuality, the connectivity, it's awesome. The last Western Zemuria game has over 50 playable characters, and there's this part where you have to sort them into 2 teams of 20. It's both stellar and also very upsetting if you forgot to level up some of those characters. Anyways, the theme. The Trails world is far from grimdark, but it is volatile. Individual people and whole communities have been scarred by encountering the worst of what weapons and other tech can do, including experimentation. And related to that, there are several characters with complex PTSD and also just normal PTSD. And as a person with a complex PTSD diagnosis, I really think it's very well written. Hence, my crying several times. And also literally every time I rewatch the scenes on YouTube, which is often. A big theme of JRPGs is the power of friendship, though, which sounds very saccharine, and also usually is, even in Trails. But it's also very good because the antidote to complex PTSD and PTSD is reestablishing trust in the world and in other people. And that is exactly the theme of the genre. No one saves the world alone. It is only through many heroes contributing their strengths, combat or otherwise. I'll let those deeper insights wait for another video because I can't do it without spoiling, but I will leave you with this thesis. Trails is ultimately about the cyclical and traumatic effects of advancements in knowledge and how that affects humanism itself. Okay, I'll hold back for now. I left out how they put it all into the NPCs. I left out the in-game books. I left out the music. Oh my god, I am so good at self-control. I am so well adjusted. Anyways, I'm excited to get going. Let's go ahead and party.